Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the second day of the Saudi Conference on Information Systems. I hope yesterday was a day full of informative sessions for all of you and sparked intriguing discussions amongst you. And we hope that today will be even better. We're excited to kickstart this morning's session with a keynote speech from a renowned expert in the field of digitalization and information technology, titled Toward Responsibly Harnessing Digitalization and Artificial Intelligence. Please join me in welcoming the moderator of this keynote session, Professor Musa al-Bashrawi, who will briefly introduce our speaker, Professor Supratik Saka from University of Virginia.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today, we will be listening to a big name in the field of information system, Professor Supratik Sarkar. He likes to be called Subra. Subra is a Rose-Rice professor at McIntire University of Commerce, University of Virginia. He is the current editor-in-chief of Information System Research, ISR, and the past president for the Association of Information Systems. He is a prominent researcher and academic known for his work in the information system and management, where he focuses on the interaction of technology, organizations, and society. He has published lots of work on top-tier journals, and he has received numerous awards for his contribution to the field. His work not only advances the theoretical knowledge, but also addresses the practical challenges faced by the organization in the digital era. By this, I'm handing off the mic to him to listen for his interesting speech about toward responsibly harnessing digitalization and AI. Join me to welcome Supratik to the stage.
Thank you, Musa, for the very kind introduction. Salam alaikum. Distinguished and honorable attendees, and dear friends and colleagues, let me first thank the conference organizers and program chairs and the entire Saudi AIS community for your kind invitation, warm hospitality, and immense generosity. My sincere congratulations to the organizers for having such a wonderful conference. I would especially like to thank Mazen Shawush, Musa al-Bashrawi, Iman and Mona Alyami, and also Tawfiq al-Ashur for welcoming me to this community. This is my second visit to Saudi Arabia and to KFUPM, and I'm delighted to be here and to see my old friends and meet new ones. We live in an interesting era of digitalization and AI. And while the promises of these technological advances are unbounded, there are lots of concerns about some of the undesirable consequences. This brings the notion of responsibility and responsible digitalization or AI to our attention. So my talk seeks to touch on this issue, and the title is Toward Responsibly Harnessing Digitalization and AI. Obviously, this is a broad topic that can be approached from many directions, and so I will take an IS educator's perspective. So the outline of the talk is as follows. First, I provide a brief introduction. Next, to contextualize the discussion, I offer a digitalization scenario. Now, this is a scenario some of you may have seen from other related talks, but the talk sort of goes in a slightly different direction after that. Thereafter, we discuss two narratives of digitalization and AI. Then I problematize the narratives, and this brings us to responsible digitalization and AI, and the role that IS academics can play. And then I will end with some concluding remarks. The importance of digitalization in virtually every facet of our lives is unquestionable, whether it's commerce, medical care, personal relationship, entertainment, education, and a lot more. Many, if not most of us in information systems and related disciplines are engaged in research related to this topic in some way or the other. And many of our former students and practitioner colleagues present here are actually leading the real-world initiatives in this area, envisioning and implementing ways of doing business that would have been unimaginable without the digital and AI revolution. Interestingly, it is difficult to find a discipline today that is not engaged with digitalization and AI. In fact, even colleagues in humanities are engaging in digital humanities, and they are also using machine learning in their work. So this presents an opportunity for us, since the entire world is interested in what we do. However, it also poses a challenge. The question is, how do we remain distinctive? The socio-technical perspective, which has been a foundation for IS and has been described as the axis of cohesion for the discipline, offers two simple guidelines that can help enhance the level of distinctiveness of our work. First, to understand digital or AI phenomenon and to guide digitalization and AI initiatives, we should focus on both the social and the technical considerations and their interactions. And the second, we need to pay simultaneous attention to both instrumental and humanistic outcomes, where instrumental refers to efficiency, business value, and so on, and humanistic essentially is related to issues of human well-being. Now, before I proceed, I want to quickly highlight what I think digitalization means. Of course, in our midst, we have experts in this area who might have a different definition or conception. But through my engagement with some of the digitalization experts and sort of querying them and brainstorming with them, I sort of took away these three core elements of digitalization. First, it involves unprecedented levels of computing power infusion and hyperconnections among objects, systems, and applications. This is relatively new because now we are sort of infusing technology wherever possible and then connecting them. The second is robotification, rather datafication and robotification. And the third is platformization. And I'll elaborate a bit on these ideas. But datafication and robotification are closest to the notion of AI, but it's really difficult to separate AI from many aspects of digitalization. One of the issues that I find problematic is people think of AI as this isolated program, but it's actually within the entire digital ecosystem. And so it's important to keep in mind that it's related, that these ideas are related and difficult to separate. Now, I know most of you know these terms, but let me quickly go over them. First, datafication. Datafication is the technological trend of turning aspects of our life into data that is then subsequently transformed into information to realize a new form of value. Then comes robotification, which is the process of replacing humans with robots in undertaking specific tasks. Platformization is not so intuitive, but it is very central to the digital revolution. And this is the use of specialized digital resources that can enable value-creating interactions between external parties, producers or consumers, and relies on network effects and facilitates widespread impact, note, in ways that were not imagined earlier due to its complex, decentered nature. So one example of digital platform where new user engagement led to development of unanticipated new services is Twitch. Its evolution has involved video game streaming to different types of creative content, such as music and cooking, to talk shows, to education and editorial and tutorials, to charity and fundraising, and the list goes on. So the evolution has happened as new stakeholders have come and engaged with the platform. Now, let us try to define AI, which I think is, we take for granted, but it's not a trivial undertaking. The origin of serious thinking about AI is often associated with the famous Dartmouth Summer Workshop in 1956. And I found this quite interesting. The goal was to make the machine behave in ways that would be called intelligent if the human were to so behave, right? And so despite the many developments over time, there has been no singular agreed upon definition of AI. And indeed, according to Berente et al. In an editorial in MIS Quarterly, they say that AI is not a single discernible thing. It's not a device, it's not a program, not an algorithm. So this sort of ties in with the idea that, digitalization and AI are intricately related. All right. At the present time, we often reserve the term AI for machine learning algorithms based on neural networks and data-driven prediction. One way to define it without getting bogged down into the details of today, right, like neural networks and so on, is to think of AI as the frontier of computational advancements that references human intelligence in addressing even more complex decision-making problems. Of course, we can elaborate on this decision, but this is a good way to sort of abstract away what we mean or what we might mean by AI. Now, to contextualize our discussion of digitalization and AI, I want to introduce a digital scenario. This is based on real initiative, but it is also fictional because I have added elements that really have not been implemented, right? So why did I choose this scenario? This is about a middle school classroom. And I chose this scenario because, first, it's easy to relate to, right? We live in a competitive world. Many societies and parents have high aspiration for their kids. There are actual initiatives such as these that are happening. And I think one thing that we sometimes forget is digitalization is not universal. Digital solutions are culturally embedded. Because say in the case of education, right, your conception here of good education in Saudi Arabia might be quite different from what it is in some other parts of the world. So I think sometimes we have to keep that in mind, that digitalization and what we digitalize and what we apply AI to should be considered carefully in the context of the culture. So close your eyes and imagine yourself in the digital classroom. Let us look at the key actors in our digitalized classroom: the students, the teacher, the robot assistant, and several technologies including sensors, student tablet computers, and the Omniscient Educational Controller System, or OECS, which is basically the computer which we call all-knowing or omniscient, right? Students in the class have wristbands, and they also need to wear headbands that capture their brain waves, right? This sort of ties with some of the things that Professor Tony Vance was talking about yesterday, so you'll find some connections. We also have a robot assistant and the teacher who's aided by the omniscient system. So let us look a bit deeper into the headbands and wristbands. The brain waves from the headbands can be used to infer the kids' attention levels, cognitive load, emotional state, learning style, and reaction to content. The wristbands offer information about arousal, stress, and fatigue. So as I mentioned earlier, we have the robot assistant. As students enter the classroom one by one, they need to check in with the robot. The robot greets the student, provides some instructions and feedback verbally, and electronically shares assignments or collects students' assignments that may be due. At the entry point and during class, the robot can also assess and report on basic health vitals, the emotional state and mood of each student, and perhaps even those of the teacher. Now, in the age of generative AI, it is not impossible to envision the fact that the robot also holds office hours. The teacher is aided by and may eventually be led by the omniscient system. She teaches the students, adjusting her teaching and her interventions dynamically based on real-time nudges and recommendations for the system that utilizes inputs from robot and sensors about the extent of and nature of learning, attention, and emotional states of the students. So for example, the computer might say, okay, student A is not paying attention, ask a question. Or say student B is getting bored with this material, ask this difficult question. So it is a very dynamic system which is prompting the teacher to teach the class in a certain manner, thereby providing customized education for the students in the classroom. Now let us turn attention to the right-hand side of the figure. Now we can think of it as the ecosystem. We have the parents, the principal, and other parties such as regional school administration, government agencies, high school scholarship and gifted programs, and platform companies. The system may request inputs from parents and also provide hourly or daily feedback to parents regarding their child's performance, including their attentiveness and concentration, participation, preparedness, instances of brilliant analytical brilliance, creativity, and calmness under pressure. Parents are then encouraged to act on feedback so that the children can improve further. Similarly, the principal now does not have to wait until the end of the term, but has a real-time view of what is going on in the classroom with respect to effectiveness of learning, student performance, the teacher's effectiveness, and so on, and can see comparisons across students, teachers, courses, and classrooms on many dimensions. Naturally, finally, I should mention that the data from the omniscient system or the computer system is at the heart of new services that a variety of parties may design and offer. So, reasonably clear what the scenario is like? All right, next we look at what I see are the two distinct narratives on digitalization and AI. The three elements of the triangle are constantly combining with each other to drive more and more digitalization. and hence the many positive effects. You can see some of them on the right-hand side, such as giving rise to innovative digital services. That's what many of the entrepreneurs are trying to do. New knowledge discovery, more efficient and smarter work, helping to transcend human limitations, and facilitating greater sustainability of the processes, and fairness due to reliance on data and not subjective opinions. I'm sure in the papers you've presented, you've had instances of some of these benefits. And over time, we expect these effects to feed further into the digitalization efforts, resulting in a virtuous cycle. So the benefits are potentially limitless. Indeed, one of my favorite books in this space, for those of you who are in social media, right, may be aware of this, is the book Thrive by the superstars of our discipline, Bapna and Ghosh, who state that, that AI is positively influencing the aspects of our daily lives and that we care the most about: our health and wellness, relationships, education, the workplace, and domestic life. It fundamentally improves the emotional, physical, and material well-being of regular people around the globe. So back to our classroom case. The digitalization may result in new services such as customized tutoring mentoring, early diagnosis of healthcare conditions such as epilepsy and ADHD. It may predict students' future performance. It results in, and actually this is happening, higher grades and more efficient teaching and learning. It may also aid in the selection for scholarships and gifted programs. And it may help teachers go beyond her physical and cognitive limitations to give students individualized attention. It also helps the teachers keep parents updated on their child's performance and progress with unprecedented frequency and precision, and providing detailed and rapid, even real-time assessments to the administration. And one could say this result is more sustainable because paper has largely been eliminated, and furthermore, the process is fair since all the assessment and decisions are based on actual performance, possibly assessed by the robot, and data captured by sensors that are verifiable, rather than on the whims and fancies of the teacher or the principal. And these are just some of the benefits we can expect in this digitalized classroom. So, this vision suggests, so if you buy into this vision, if you agree with this vision, what does it suggest? It suggests that we need to pursue more computing power. We need to focus on advances in techniques, technologies for collecting and analyzing data. We need more reliable sensors. We need advances in data management and machine learning techniques. We need to work on the resistance and create more openness in the society to such a vision. And we need more industry, academic, and government collaboration, and so on. But is this the complete picture? Obviously, minor issues of adaptation and adoption would need to be ironed out, but we need to ask, are we seeing just a part of the picture? So this brings us to the other narrative. Digitalization, under many circumstances, results in increased oppressive surveillance, right? Infantilizing human beings due to the intelligence of computing. Some call it super intelligence of computing. There is likely to be amplified bias, blurred agency, radically transformed relationship between human and digital. There are also likely to be violated property rights, increasing security vulnerability in addition to intense sustainability and fairness concerns underlying such digitalization process. Moreover, because of feedback of these outcomes back into the digitalization process, we can expect to see different waves of effects of digitalization over time. Now, many of these effects are mentioned in the literature, though in fragmented ways. Shelby et al., with a number of co-authors from Google, right, which we would generally assume to be focusing on just the positive effects, talks about the harms pertaining to digitalization and AI. And they include representational harms, allocative harms, quality of service harms, interpersonal harms, and societal and sustainability harms. Let me briefly discuss these harms. First is the representational harm. It refers to beliefs about different social groups that reproduce unjust social hierarchies along the lines of disability, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, and sexuality. Then we have allocative harms, which arise due to misrepresentation and training and algorithmic bias and affect the allocation of privileges such as jobs, housing, admissions, and so on. For example, employment and scholarship screening may be preferential towards certain profiles. More troubling is the fact that allocative decisions are often based on evolving, inconclusive, and have the quality of service harms, which refer to the fact that the service that one receives can suffer sometimes based on. Then we have interpersonal harms or even personal harms that I want to say a little bit about. This is something of a serious concern to all of us, but we tend to overlook it. One of the troubling patterns being observed is due to digitalization, we have what is referred to as mass moronization. It is a result of memory atrophy, short attention span, media addiction, ego inflation and deflation associated with, particularly with AI-enabled social media. Then there's a loss of agency, control, and autonomy that may lead to the infantilization in many cases. There are issues of privacy violations, online harassment, cyberbullying, loss of dignity, to name a few. And finally, we have some of the societal or social system or sustainability harms. There is a possibility of breakdown of the social structure leading to unclear accountability, and I'll give you some examples of these later. Further, stratification of society is being observed, not to mention the political distortion and amplification of fake news. And we are seeing serious environmental harms as a result of lithium and rare earth mining. And we tend to look away from the pollution. Did you know that refinement of 1 ton of rare earth elements generates 75,000 liters of acidic water and 1 ton of radioactive residue? In short, according to Crawford, digitalization is being driven by the ruthless pragmatism of exploiting the mineralogical layer, leading to sustainability harms. Now, the bottom line is that production costs do not factor in the cost of repairing environmental damage. When we are calculating these costs of digitalization, we never consider these secondary costs. And alarmingly, digitalization is characterized as one of the least sustainable and most environmentally damaging sectors. And some research suggests that the direct greenhouse emissions caused by digital technologies over their entire life are larger than the reductions enabled by the digital technologies. Now, I do not know how accurate these claims are, but we need to investigate these claims through our research and not just look away. Let us now get back to our scenario. Obviously, we don't have time to drill into the many effects we are likely to see, but I have highlighted a few from our scenario that may be instructive. Students' bodies and minds are under constant surveillance, and I'm sure you can appreciate the possibility of this leading to long-term, deep psychological ill effects. Also, will the robot become controlling and abusive? Will the system and the robot infantilize the teacher? That is, make the teacher follow instruction like an infant. You know, we are all professors or training to be professors. We are teachers. Imagine we are being sort of pushed by the system to say exactly what to ask, what to say during the class. Also, will the robot become controlling and abusive? Will the system and robot, okay, I talked about this, and this can lead to lost dignity. Given the complex relationship between the teacher and the robot and the omniscient system, we have a blurring of agency. It is not clear who is acting when the robot is giving feedback to the student. So let us say, if a student experiences breakdown or depression on receiving feedback, or God forbid, commits suicide, who is accountable and morally responsible, right? With respect to transformed relationships, students may start seeing the robot as an authority figure, and some may even see it as a villain. Now, what if the student abuses and kicks a robot? Is that morally okay? This is a new dilemma of moral patiency that we need to think about. With respect to equity, will such schools be available to all who seek admission, or will there be a stratification between haves and have-nots who have access to such schools? And the last point, there's an army of pseudo-slaves involved in mining of lithium and rare earth metals that underlie intense computation, underlying the unrelenting digitalization and AI training and so on around the globe, and exploitative data labeling, image tagging, and content moderation behind the scenes. The amount of toxic material and radioactive residue to define the rare earth materials is shocking, as is the suffering of those involved in mining. The amount of electricity and water requirements to, for example, train and run AI models and to operate data centers is also beyond imagination. So how sustainable and fair is digitalization really? Let us now closely look at the two narratives. The key characteristics of the digital dystopia narrative is that it denies the beneficial effects of digitalization, right? So if you can please switch on. Right. So what we see in this narrative is there is no acknowledgement that digitalization and AI is bringing to us and our society. For example, Calvo and Peter say, there is no evidence that digital technologies are making us a wiser or happier society. Then, recently, there was a paper published in ISR, and I was the accepting editor. It's a very nice paper. The authors actually talk about digitalization or big data practices as entrapment of the consumers. And they see it as Faustian bargain. And essentially this relates to the, the story of Faustus, Dr. Faustus, who sells his soul to the devil in order to get short-term benefits, right? So it's a very critical piece, but these are sort of gradually coming into the fore. But the important part of this entire body of work is there is no acknowledgement of the positive thing digitalization brings. And then Noble has a fantastic book on the role of IT and AI. She says that AI will become a major human rights issue in the 21st century. Now, what about the other side? the earlier slide had to do with what are the scholars who write on or who are sort of fueling the digital dystopia narrative, what are they saying? Now, what about scholars who fuel the digital utopia narrative? The most common patterns are silencing critiques, right? For example, anything bad happens, and what you'll be told is, oh, this is just an unintended consequence, right? Now, not all unintended consequences are unanticipated if there is an effort to anticipate, to play what if, to see the different possibilities. The other is the exhortation to accept the dark side of digitalization. The general commentary is, look, we enjoy all the bright side, so we have to accept the dark side. All right. Now, are the people who are enjoying the bright side the same as those who are suffering the dark side? Often the privileged people of the society get to choose that we keep the dark side, but the price is paid by the different strata of society. Then there's this famous utilitarian argument, and the argument goes like, well, after all, it provides the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. I have honestly not seen a single accounting of who the beneficiaries are and how this argument, what's the empirical basis of this argument that greatest number of people are being, served positively. Then there's the highlighting of everything is done with consent of knowledgeable subjects and reiterating the promise of almost there. Just one more round of training, just 2 more variables, and we will attain for perfection. So, what is problematic is the one-sided rhetoric. And this is from the book by Bapna and Ghosh. My point, the way I want to see it is, it's not that either perspective is wrong, but that they are both incomplete. And what is worse, they don't acknowledge each other or talk to each other. Okay, so now we move towards what shall we do? And obviously, this is the weakest part of the presentation. I think I have established to some degree that yes, we have all these positive things, but the negative effects are often put under the carpet, and they are quite significant. So I was thinking, okay, responsibility. And responsibility, responsible AI, responsible digitalization is now a catchphrase. And responsible AI means, okay, we need to do a certain things which I will mention, right? But I sort of wanted to take a step back and say, what does responsibility mean? So one way to think about it is, it's a philosophical commitment to acting with compassion, right? And this includes a commitment to certain human values and positions. And these include autonomy and human agency, right? You actually privilege that humans need to have some autonomy and human agency. You value environmental sustainability. You value social justice and awareness of diverse stakeholders, not just 1 or 2 stakeholders. We have a long-termism, intergenerational thinking, and globalism. And we balance profit with purpose. So these are some values, these are ideals. Not every project is going to meet all of these values, right? But I think these values need to be acknowledged. Now, at a micro level or at a tactical level, we have certain mechanisms and features that support these values. And this might include transparency and explainability. We often hear of these 2 words when people talk of AI responsibility. Yeah? But it is such a local solution that it cannot actually deal with the notion of responsibility at a broader level. Human-centric design of dignity, accountability and governance. You have all companies sort of coming up with governance principles, and educating and lobbying different stakeholders. So let me make some assertions on on this topic on responsibility. First is, we have to acknowledge that being responsible is not easy. It involves complex trade-offs. And second, being responsible is a journey. One of the reasons why responsibility gets nowhere is because we think of, are you responsible or not? Well, in most cases, we cannot reach the highest bar of responsibility. Think of ourselves as parents. Are we responsible or not? As professors, are we responsible or not? Yeah, we have certain values, and we are trying to do the best we can. So I think it's important to think of responsibility as a journey, which is multi-pronged, multi-level, sustained, and holistic. Merely having high-level principles promotes the idea of responsibility as facade and leads to, I have just adopted Floridi's terms. He talks about ethics cooking and ethics blue washing. It's responsibility cooking and responsibility washing. And the last thing I want to say here is that because we cannot achieve perfection as per well-established standards, we feel helpless. We say, it's pointless since we cannot achieve these ideals. I strongly disagree because we need to have a perspective of responsibility as a journey. So what is responsibility? A simple way to think of it is responsibility as a value-informed, context-sensitive balancing, right? I want to include value-informed and also context-sensitive. When you have responsibility for everything, those principles actually do not matter. We have to have context-based principles. And the IS community, which I see as a socio-technical academic community, is in a good position to do this balancing because we are typically independent at the intersection of societal, economic, and technical considerations. We are a global community, so we are not thinking about just a little part of humanity. We are engaged with theory and practice, and we focus both on instrumental and humanistic interests. That puts us in an excellent position to help in this balancing. So let me quickly summarize the two narratives. I think it's quite instructive to think of it this way. So the digital utopia narrative talks about the unbridled fascination and optimism for digital possibilities. Unbridled is the word, right? Second, how do we define relevance? Relevance is defined by what companies are doing. Oh, company is doing it, I'm doing it, so I'm relevant. Focus on immediate gains, privileging how-to knowledge, techniques, ignoring concerns, especially those arriving over time. Utilitarian logic, which I described for justification, typically ethics blue washing and ethics shopping, and legal constraints being considered, which are always behind time. Let's take a look at what digital dystopian narrative emphasizes. Unbridled aversion and rejection of digital possibilities. Imagine you take away all digitalization. What's our world going to be like? That is also an untenable position. What is relevance? Relevance is how we've all we are misinterpreting what is happening. We have no understanding of the underlying currents and surfacing unethical practices of companies, such as notions of digital entrapment, Faustian. In fact, we had a conference on AI, which was AI as a monster, right? So metaphors of monster being used for AI. Essentially, focusing on the dehumanizing outcomes over time and downstream. When you look at this, you can see both are clearly untenable. So what can we do as IS educators, incorporating balanced values in envisioning, designing, and implementing digital initiatives? I remember I used to teach systems analysis and design at one point in my career. We used to teach economic feasibility and economic impacts. We used to talk about technology. I don't remember teaching or asking students to do the analysis on the human condition across the different stakeholders. I think we can do that very easily in all our classes. Second, teach designers to anticipate issues, not blame unintended consequences. We need to encourage value-sensitive design, which has a commitment to well-being, justice, and dignity. And indeed, in a commentary by Baskerville et al., they talk about the fact that mainstream IS scholars are silent on these matters, despite being from the socio-technical tradition. We need to work to develop student values. And Bauman, a postmodern philosopher, talks about something called moral impulse, which is a feeling of selfless, infinite and unconditional responsibility and care for others. But this has to be in conjunction with digital fascination, digital imagination, and digital optimism. You can't be one or the other. An appreciation of the importance and tactics to ensure autonomy and human agency, environmental sustainability, and so on. Most importantly, balancing profit motives and practices with unanticipated harms. Then we also need codes and oaths to protect against the epistemic vulnerability of the different stakeholders. And indeed, the AIS has come up with a shared value of digitalization, which you will all receive communication about, and hopefully you can expose all your students. They're very simple codes, but I think they need to start thinking in those terms. Of course, they have a problem of creating a tick box culture, and there are no enforcement issues because unlike some of the professions, if you don't follow the code, there are punishments. In IS, we actually have no enforcement mechanisms. So it is advisory, and therefore we need this value-based training in our education. Or balance narratives in society and lobby for regulation and deregulation. This is too complicated a diagram. Essentially, all it's saying is, we as IS educators actually touch a lot of stakeholders, right? We talk to students, we talk to companies and practitioners through executive teaching and so on. We also talk to policymakers, and we have the potential to talk to the society. And I urge all of us, me included, to not only write academic papers, but also write in newspapers, in popular magazines, not taking a side of, look, digitalization is good, or it's terrible, but taking an approach that sort of balances the narrative to the extent possible. Now, we also need to do research to promote responsibility, and we need to acknowledge and focus on dual effects simultaneously. This is not easy to do, but that's why we need to do it. I think we've had enough of, look, digitalization and AI is great, look, it does these fancy things, and look, it's such a terrible thing, and I just found it's caused disaster in the society. I think we know both these. Now the question is, how to blend these two views in one study and have frameworks to guide people in this balancing. The other thing is, we need good examples of cases. Without cases, these principles don't come to life. So I hope for companies that say, we are doing responsible digitalization or responsible AI, we can go in and study them critically and say, okay, this is not perfect, but this is how the dilemmas are being navigated. That is what we need to do for our education and for the education of our students. And of course, there's scope for every methodological tradition to contribute to this move. So some thoughts. Digitalization and AI are here to stay. Being responsible is complex, multifaceted, multi-level journey, right? So if you think very simply, it has to do with data responsibility. It has to do with algorithm design responsibility. It has to do with use responsibility. It has to do with governance responsibility, and many more. So it is not okay, here are these 5 principles, and now we are responsible. The key is how to not forego benefits while also minimizing the harm of stakeholders. Responsibility calls for careful assessment of outcomes over an agreed upon time horizon. And there will be, in the near future, many on the wrong side of AI and digitalization. So we must ask, why do we need AI here? Who are the winners and losers? How do we protect, compensate, and rehabilitate those affected? I have to say that the economic analysis is very limited because the costs of digitalization are not the full costs. They are costs that are production costs, typically. But all the secondary costs that society is left to bear are actually not part of the equation. As teachers, we need to help nurture digital optimism, the ability to envision digital possibilities, along with moral impulse with respect to digitalization in students, future leaders, and citizens. And then we need to engage the different stakeholders as outlined in the earlier slide. Or else we can just say, stay with status quo, just talk about digital and AI governance, fairness, and responsibility, and let the sequence of events happen as they are. So finally, I want to conclude with a poem. If you didn't follow what I said, hopefully the poem will convey the core ideas of what I wanted to convey. So in circuits sparked by human hands, where data flows across the lands, a digital world begins to grow with power beyond what we know. Algorithms sift and patterns gleam. They shape our lives like current stream. Yet every code that moves so fast holds shadows cast from futures past. To balance harms, to seek the good, is more than just a line of code. It asks us a mindful hand, a guide to help each thread expand. For companies may seek the gain, while society bears loss and strain. The rush to automate and thrive must need the call to keep life alive. Responsible digital strides should steer with values bold and motives clear. To place each human face in view and weigh the risks in all we do. An AI mind, precise and swift, can give the world a wondrous lift. But left unchecked, it's apt to roam beyond the walls we call our home. So may we craft with vision wide, with ethics firm as our guide, to harness tech with wise intent and honor it, all may augment. Let companies and people stand together, building hand in hand, to craft a future wise and fair for digital life and the life we share. And the big surprise, or maybe you expected, it is by ChatGPT. Thank you. So essentially, business activities, like all human activities, cannot exist unless people follow a minimum moral principle, and this principle is consistent with business pursuits, such as making profit. Shukran jazilan. Thank you.
Thank you, Sobra. What a fascinating speech. All is your rock star. So I will start from my side, then we give the floor to the audience. And emphasizing the point, to seek the good and balance harm. There's a questions raising there. we always, as IS educator, trying to leverage the utilization of AI, getting our students using AI and helping them. This is a good side. The bad side or the ethical side, the unethical side, how we elevating, not to use AI in cheating and some other unethical ways of getting their report written, essays, and so on. So what is the balanced way here? We could get our students using the AI, but not going the south way.
Musa, I could not hear you fully. I think the sound system is not coming through very clearly, but I think I got the gist of your question, which is, students' use of AI, how to balance between the good use and the bad use.
That's right. This is right.
So this is at a more implementation level. Lucky for me, my talk is at a higher level, right? So I don't have to answer these hard questions. But I think the point of the matter is that values in education need to be increased, right? Our education is increasingly going towards skills. Values don't matter. I think values matter because in the end, for a society to function and harness technology effectively without values, it's very hard to guide everything. So for everything, you need some institutional mechanisms, and sometimes they are so specific that those mechanisms don't work. That's why the principles are not working. So you need to attack it from the top as well as from the individuals who are sort of using AI or who are designing AI. So what I would say is our education needs to become more values-based. And I don't mean necessarily the word ethics, because ethics for many executives is sort of a boring word that they switch off. But it's professionalism, it is values. I think these are better words. And I think just as you have very innovatively started an AI course, I think it's important to also have the idea of what values ensure the success of AI and minimize the damage caused by AI. So that's the best I can do, but this is a difficult problem that we are all struggling with.
This is good enough. Thank you, Sora. I'm going to give the floor to the audience now and see if okay, we have Thomas here. Can we get the mic to him?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Supra, for this very interesting talk. I think what you're sketching here, or the vision that you're sketching here, is that the IS field as a whole, let's say, undergoes a shift where we are more receptive and more aware of the implications of technologies, both good and bad. Now, I was wondering, wouldn't that imply that in reality, right, when we talk about the situated actions that we do as writers, as reviewers, as editors, wouldn't that mean that we often take a stance on something, that we take a moral position? And wouldn't that mean that we have to make judgments that we might circumvent by saying that, we're just describing, we are neutral, we are not making any claims of whether this is good or bad? And yeah, I mean, that's basically what I was thinking about. Do you have any thoughts about it, especially as an author, but also as an editor?
Again, these are very difficult implementation questions, but I think one way is to sort of be in the center and not look left or right.
Yes, yes.
The other is to look left and right, to process left and right, and then be at the center. And I think these are two very different ways. I think most of the disciplines don't have our breadth, as I was trying to convince that what the socio-technical lens has given us, we have inherited certain values inherently, which we had forgotten, by the way, that instrumental and humanistic outcomes have always been important. After all, if you think of the coal mines in England or UK, where this socio-technical ideas came up from, right? It had that very central. But somehow, because we've been in business school, we forgot about the humanistic outcomes. All we are saying is we need to sort of bring these in the fore. And also because we are always thinking of the social and technical, and of course that has taken many forms, we are in an excellent position to see how these work, be educated rather than wash it off. That's the only message I have. Let's not wash it off, or let us not just say, this is my truth, and that's it. If you say anything else, you're actually detracting from the right vision for the discipline. What I think is, IS will do better if we can inculcate this responsible technology use, because everyone is doing technology use, right? Everyone is doing technical design. I totally agree that we've got into AI development. In fact, it was a mistake to give up development and design. Now this has enriched us. But how can we make it more IS? Well, we can inscribe virtues in our artifacts. That becomes a priority. And whether or not that is going to create virtuous use is a different matter, but it's a journey. And I urge our entire community to always think of these two values together, the instrumental and the humanistic, and move forward. Sorry, it doesn't answer your question, and I'm restating my position, but that really is the broad level answer to what you are saying.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
I think we have a few minutes for 2 more questions.
Iman.
Here.
Hello. Thank you, Subra. Thank you, Musa. It's a very interesting talk. I would go back to the triangular, like the diagram, for the digitalized classroom. And I think it's missing a very important element there, which is the spatial awareness, the proximity, studying with other students. I almost felt sorry for those kids. Because that's a very, very important skill to have, learning by imitation, right? So if we transformed the whole educational system, especially for kids under 18 years old, which like their brain is not yet fully developed, so I'm afraid that will create even a greater harm, which is highly socially non-functional human beings. And augmented reality is not a solution. I don't think it's a solution. So what are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are exactly like yours, right? Sometimes we are focusing too much on skills. We are forgetting, again, if you're technocentric, you're actually focusing on this discrete task and how can I solve it or make more efficient with technology. When you are thinking of the broader picture, you are thinking of the social interactions, you are thinking of second-order effects. Like, it's not enough that your child graduates with grades, but then cannot interact with anyone. So those are the higher-order effects, and we need to. It's not that every designer can solve or address all of these issues, but they need to be documented. There needs to be debate and dissension before we jump head-on into implementing whatever the vision is. So I completely agree. Yes, and by the way, this vision is a made-up vision, right? I don't have all details, but such classes were being implemented. And this is not online class. These are all co-located. But the whole idea is, I'm going to know whether the kid is taking a break, whether the kid is thinking like other kids are thinking. There's so many things you can measure. And that then leads to certain efficiencies, which in a technology-centric way of thinking, with instrumental ideas, which is like grades, admission to top high schools or universities, makes a lot of sense. But then there are, you would say, unintended consequences. And I would say they're not as unintended as you think, because you would anticipate it.
Yes, thank you, Subra.
We have 1 more question, Dr. Maad.
Thank you, Dr. Musa. Thank you very much, Supra. Appreciate the insightful presentation. You mentioned at the beginning related to the biasness of the AI models and how they could emerge to be biased. And so I think there is a couple of layers of biasness. There could be biasness due to the lack of data. So eventually the AI models are basically trying to mimic a statistical model. So let's suppose there is a distribution there where the AI model is trying to mimic. There could be insufficient data, so that's fine. This is our fault. We should look for more data. But then the second layer would be that the actual perception of us as a human is biased. And the AI model is nothing but mimicking the reality of humans and their biasness. And then there's the third layer that could be, well, that's the true statistical model. Truly, it is bias. I mean, you might have a group of people that are more susceptible to a certain disease than another group, or they might be more better than another group in certain dimension. And so the model will be biased. So how do we, I mean, probably some thoughts, how do we treat such a model? Should we, as data scientists now, have some axiom that we should guide the model towards fairness, even though it is, the case is not true? Or should we just stick with the truthfulness of the model? I'm not sure if I'm making sense for you.
You're making a lot of sense. This is not a dilemma that is not known, right? This is for any program, which sort of tries to balance, towards race, towards gender. All of these issues have been debated. And there are 2 points I would like to make. One is the data and algorithmic bias are just one part of bias. And you actually brought the human element of what if humans are biased. And I've heard arguments like AI can be used to reduce bias. Yes, but it also introduces bias. The whole idea is we need to reflect, debate, and then proceed. Right now, we are not debating about which bias goes up, which bias comes down, which is causing harm, which is not causing harm, and which is a deliberate decision. I think we are just saying, well, this is bias, but so are humans, so good luck. And I think that is something we should not, as educators, we must educate our students who are future designers, right? To say, all right, bias is, you will never eliminate bias. You will never be fully responsible, right? But are we moving towards being responsible? And that really is the message of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Sobra. This is the end of the session.
Okay.
So it's always our pleasure to host you here. Network coffee, or coffee break starting now for 20 minutes.
Thank you. Shukran. Thank you so much for your help.
Always looking at the implementation. Looking at the implementation side. I know it's quite high level. Thank you.
In the end.
that happened and all the valuable insights that we heard about AI in the past 1.5 days into real-world application for a company that is 3 years old, where it started with assumptions, hypotheses, and then we have seen the results. So just to give you some business insight, there are two key aspects that we are going to discuss. First one are merchants, and merchants are businesses that are transacting on a daily basis. And there are couriers, which are the shipping companies available in the Saudi market. And not all shipping companies, only last mile, which delivers the parcel to your doorstep. So a little bit of the history about the industry. In 2017, there were only 16 licensed companies in Saudi Arabia. And due to some regulation changes, the number jumped by 10x in 2022. So what that did, I think the clicker is not responding as it should. So what that did, it created chaos in the market, where there are 160 new companies are looking for the demand, instead of the merchants are looking for the suppliers, which are the shipping companies. So the shipping companies faced many problems entering the market. There is high competition. It's a huge number of new companies entering at the same time. The operational costs are compounding month over month, so they have to drive volumes very fast in order to be breaking even or even profitable. And then there are challenges for merchants from the merchant perspective. So now today they have 160 new choices to consider in their selection process. It's very hectic. There are a lot of technical terminologies in the logistic domain where not every business owner can understand easily. So let me give you an example. If there is a shipment that is going from Riyadh to Jeddah, which is approximately 10 hours by road or 2 hours by airplane, and we put for this example a fashion item that is the size 20 centimeters and 14 kgs box. So if we take the courier one, they consider Jeddah as a main city, and the base price for it is 12 Saudi riyals, but they charge this amount for the first 10 kgs only. Then they will be charging additional 2 riyals per additional kg, and the total will be 20 Saudi riyals. Another company will be considering Jeddah as a second-tier city, and their base price is based on the first 15 kgs. And therefore, even though it is 14 kg shipment, it will fall under the bracket of 15 Saudi riyals. Now imagine that merchants like retail stores or fashion brands, they have to ship 200 or 300 shipments per day. They cannot do this comparison for each and every single order available on their e-commerce platforms. So what we did, we came up with Turud, which is a shipping management platform. And what it will do, it's an API integration. It will sync all the orders from the e-commerce side. It will digest the information available within the shipment details, the sender details, the recipient details, and then it will give a recommendation for the best fit shipping partner in Saudi Arabia. Now, key attributes that we were taking, it was the normal web application development stack, MySQL relational database, etc. And then we will take the package dimensions, weight, item contents, and then we will get the information. It's very easy for the users, even though if they are not very technical, they can just sign up, integrate their e-commerce using their credentials, and then they can start using the service. Tons of benefits. It's a single integration. It gives a direct 40% saving on the actual price if they go directly working with shipping companies. So how it works behind the scenes. So behind the scenes, what happened after a year of operation, we have signed up more than 1,000 merchants, which is enough sample to explore and see the trends and to understand how can we optimize for the merchant side even more. We shipped 200,000 shipments in the first few months, and 65 out of 200 shipping companies actually delivered those shipments. So there is a long tail list of companies that couldn't reach to any volume. Now, what were our assumptions initially? That merchants are driven by price. So the better the price, the more likelihood that they will be shipping a shipment with a specific courier. We thought that they are looking for speed, so we need to invest in the on-demand delivery, which is 2 hours delivery. And we thought that increasing the number of service providers and different shipping methods like cold shipping, temperature-controlled shipping, will add value as well to the platform. And to an extent, we were wrong. When we looked at the data after 6 months of operation, we saw that the merchants are shipping with the companies that they know before the new regulation, which are the original 16 shipping companies. And they had reasoning for that. It's difficult to trust valuable items with a new brand name shipping courier. And the demand side, their end consumer, when they select on the checkout page, they tend to select the shipping options that they are familiar with. So what we did, we decided that we will set goals, and we don't want to invest in pushing in the sales a lot. Rather than that, we want to change the behavior of our merchants, and we want to give opportunity to the new shipping companies in the market. So we want to help them really select with informed information. So we embedded a recommender engine called GORS. Reason is very simple. It's very well documented. It's fast to implement. There is the learning of it is very fast. And we wanted to give our merchants recommendations based on 3 things. Their behavior, so how frequently they ship, how many shipments per day, at what time of the day they are printing the shipping labels, which aligns with the shipping company's cutoff time to collect the shipments in a single day. Also, we looked at the parcel attributes, so now we know that certain merchant is selling glass items or valuable items. They tend to ship with certain companies, or they have to use some specific packaging supply. And based on that, based on our recommendations, they started diversifying their selection for the shipping companies. There was improving in the packaging. As we were recommending to them, you have to package this item in a plastic bag instead of a box. It will save you this amount, and it will be more convenient for the shipping company to handle this shipment on the way. And then 1 year later, we wanted to optimize for the time of delivery as well. So we used a time series forecasting called Facebook Profit, and what it does, it is an additive regression model. It looks at some seasonality trends and patterns in the data sets. And what it does, it will give you a prediction on what could happen next. And how we utilize it, we looked at the data for the performance of the shipping companies. And if they say in their service level agreement that we deliver from Riyadh to Jeddah in 4 to 5 companies actually deliver to Jeddah in 48 hours, which is very promising, and it incentivizes the merchants to select that shipping company. Now, once we did that, what has happened? There was higher success rate. And how we measure success rate, how many total shipments delivered to the end consumer out of the total shipments that are shipped through the system. Therefore, the shipments are delivering fast, so the merchant, the end consumer will receive the shipment. Usually if it's an impulse purchase, they just don't receive it and it will be returned to the origin. So here's a look at the numbers. These are real numbers, by the way. Our Q1 to Q4 of 2023 and our Q1 alone of 2024 surpass all of 2023. Nothing changed in marketing, nothing changed in sales. Only tweaks to optimize at the shipping side and at the merchant side. And that's it for Turud. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much for your insightful presentations. I would like now to invite Dr. Richie to the stage so we can initiate the Q&A session. We can take questions now from the audience. If you have any question, please raise your hand and a mic will be given to you. We have one here. Can we have a mic on the stage, please?
Thank you very much for these two very, very interesting talks and very insightful ones as well. I think both of your talks clearly showed that when we talk about AI in organizations, the path is made by walking, right? We cannot really see what will be, you know, the right solution in a year's time or in 2 years' time. But rather, it's like a constant experimenting or, you know, playing around with the technology and see what is happening. And especially in the second talk, right? I think you clearly showed that you had a couple of assumptions, but then you need to revise them because they were not compatible with reality. Now, that I think is easier said than done often. You have sunk costs, you have certain, you know, you want to believe that certain ideas will work because that's what has been agreed on in strategy meetings. So how do you deal with these things? How do you deal with situations where you're like, oh, we thought it should be like this, but actually it's like this? Does that come easily in your organization, or what's the situation?
So I think from a startup perspective, it's very dynamic and agile to move fast, especially in SaaS technology companies where the decision making is faster and then the trial and error doesn't hurt as much as in larger organizations.
Maybe I can also add on the question. I hear out of your question that you're also asking this exploration, is it worth it, the efforts a little bit, or like how much do you invest in exploring and where do you say now we also have to scale and pick those solutions that actually bring the value? And that's what we exactly do. So we have different approaches. Yes, we're a large organization, founded in 1860, so quite a while on the market, but we also collaborate a lot with startups, with universities. We do have one of our offices or teams at the EPFL in Lausanne. There's another team from ETH Zurich that is now again on our campus right now in Uzwil that does rapid prototyping, not solely in the field of AI, but also in evaluating are there alternative materials to produce our machines. So what they do is they have an idea, they get those ideas from the markets and the regions, they pick those up, they find the coolest, they work on them within 2 weeks. If they get to a result, they're like, okay, now R&D team, look, does it make sense or not? So we do have a little bit of both, this startup mindset ingrained in the organization, also with the help of partners. And then, of course, we also need to evaluate which are those solutions that we can now scale and take the value out.
Thanks.
There is a question here on the right. Right there, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Suleimana from Ghana. From the second speaker, I think he made an interesting point based on the assumptions the company made before they work towards it. Now, my question is this. You know, in marketing, consumer preference is not static. You know, it varies with respect to time. Now, in determining the reality based on your assumption, did you actually factor the fact that at a time will come when consumers will not like to patronize your product based on the fact that perhaps they feel they are satisfied or they are okay with your service, they must try other providers as well? Then again, my second question too is that I could see you were projecting, you know, some interesting figures. Could it be that there's some bias in your algorithm just to give us a nice picture of how your company is doing? Is it also a case of some bias algorithm? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for bringing up these two questions. So regarding the selection of the shipping companies and regarding the consumer behavior or user behavior on our system, usually people have their own bias as well. They have their own perception of a brand or for the company that are working with. And here we have to tackle this challenge at two levels. If the merchant is exposing the option of different shipping carriers on their website, then we have another layer of preference to be made, and that could be different than the merchant preference and our preference. So there is an option to give the shipping options as a black box, and you just select the speed or the service type that you would like to have, and based on that, we will give you the selection based on our recommendation as per the system.
We can take the question from that side, please.
Hello, I'm Mahiba. My question is that you mentioned during the lecture about the services, Bowler, ChatGPT, and Claire, and use of predictive maintenance and chocolate lines. So were there any challenges that Bowler faced in integrating AI in these upcoming services? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, and nice to meet you again. Of course, there are always challenges, and it's always a learning path. And yeah, I mean, if it comes to, let's say, the Bühler, or maybe I can make the example with the service that is actually not used, the Chat2 manual. So one challenge there is you have the manuals, you have a model, and now you want the model to retrieve the right information for the question you have. And the challenge we had, those manuals, these are huge PDF documents. In the PDF documents, you have tables, and in those tables, you have drawings. And those drawings then indicate where this button could potentially be that you need to push. So in the beginning, when we set up the model in the first iteration, we actually developed that solution during a hackathon. The accuracy rate was not so, let's say, overwhelming. Then we looked into why this is the case, which had a lot to do with the slicing of the documents. So we had to readjust and find the perfect or good enough balance such that the responses would be accurate enough. And of course, also when, for example, it comes to the service Claire, there you still need the expertise to interpret the summary that you get, such that then you can act on certain complaints that you may potentially receive from customers. So there are always challenges, but having challenges, facing challenges also means that you learn, and this is what we try to learn, but then also share those learnings within the organization that we can build on them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. This question is specifically for Torut. The innovation is very amazing. I like it. But I was intrigued by the merchant claims. So if I'm a merchant, I have claims. Does it go to you as a Torut or the shipping companies? Lost item, damaged items, or whatever. So how this is being handled?
Okay, thank you very much for the question, and that gives me a sensation that you are a potential customer on Torut. A very deep question. Actually, Mr. Faisal on your left-hand side is the co-founder of Torut as well. So probably you can exchange business cards. However, coming back to your question, actually, we hold the responsibility in dealing with the merchant as much as they ship through our technology. And what we call it Torut contracts. So as long as the contract is between the shipping company and Torut, then we hold the responsibility and we do process the claims for loss and damage items. It doesn't make more than 0.6% in a year time. But sometimes it's very valuable items and the compensation for it require dedicated budgets. However, we have also another option, which is called bring your own contract, where you can utilize our platform for tracking and for printing the shipping label and managing the orders, but you will hold the responsibility to communicate with the operations teams of the shipping company.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karina and Mr. Ammar, for your valuable time and informative sessions, and also the Q&A session. We will now go out for lunch break, and we'll reconvene back for a paper session and workshop at 1:15. Thank you so much.
Nice presentation.